All right, so again, I'm going to start up, but if and or when Jeremy comes in, I'm just going to pause the video. I got this article this morning. I thought it was kind of interesting. They surveyed 56,000 developers in 173 countries and asked what are the most used programming languages out there right now. So that sounds like a pretty representative sample. The good news for you is JavaScript, SQL, Java, C Sharp. You learn all those in here. All right. Not possible to learn everything that's on that list, but you've got a really good start. I thought that was interesting. All right. I am in the process of producing all the things that I've done yesterday and today. What I wanted to mention to you, because I said this is what we were going to do today. I said we were going to go and grab an Excel spreadsheet and import it into MySQL using PHPMyAdmin. There's not a lot of really good documentation out there on how to do this. This was one of the better articles. It's got 11 steps. I'm not going to run through them with you. All right, I did a thing today where I taped it, but I didn't have a lot of luck with it. Part of it, I think, is me. To be honest with you, I'm to the point where if I use Excel, other than I always come in here in Excel. You may or may not know this. You may or may not care. But to kind of protect myself, I always, where is it? Oh, let me show you. There. I always go and save the URLs from everything that I tape. So they're in there. And I've got those. There's the Lewis and Clark. There's my, a bunch of other stuff. Okay? But other than that, and that's just used as input, I don't do a lot of work with Excel. I'm not making it an excuse. I'm telling you the truth. So what they tell you to do in this particular document is they say that you should come in and you should save your Excel files as a CSV file. You know what CSV files are. We've looked at them already. All right? What I didn't know is when I set these all up, I tried to make them look, let's see, kind of like this. They were spaced out accordingly, okay? So you could read all of them. The problem is when I created those and put them into CSV files, every single blank that was in here, it made it a column. See what I'm saying? So it put a comma in there with no data. So instead of having 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 columns, I had more like 20 columns. All right? And it took me a while to even figure that out. So every time I tried doing it, I had nothing but problems trying to do it. Okay? So bottom line is, even though I went through this stuff and there's a couple tapes on it, not that I put out on the database channel, I had very little luck. So what I'd like you to do is to go out to here, and that is I'd like you to type in SQLizer.io, just like that. SQLizer.io. So why would I tell you to do this? It brings you out to here. Hopefully that's what you see on your screen, because that's a really nice tool. If you have a clue as to how to save something as a comma-separated variable file, and evidently I don't, it'll automatically create scripts for you. And why am I telling you this? Why am I showing you this? Because this is what I sent you this morning. So I want to take a minute and go over everything that I sent you. This is what's in that. This is what is in that folder that I sent you. All right? Just so you can see everything that's in there. The first is Acme. And in Acme, that's the original thing that we put in yesterday. All right? That's all the information that we put in yesterday. And it's got one table. All right? The name of the database I created was called Acme Widget. I think I just called it Acme. But the table was employees and the primary key was this. So again, nothing big there. Then what I did was I took the employees table, and we talked a little bit about this yesterday, and I said, where do I have the most duplication? And I have the most duplication here for sure, because these are all exactly the same. I've also got duplication here. So I've got duplication in my city, I've got duplication in my state, I've got duplication in my zip code, all right? And I've got duplication in my department name, and I've got duplication in my department number. So out of these 11 fields, 1, 2, 3, 4 of those fields, 5 of those fields, city, state, zip, department, name, and department number, have duplication. All right, so 5 of those fields have duplication, and 6 of those fields have no duplication. So I tried to think about, okay, how could I make this a little bit better? And then I was thinking, okay, where would people most likely screw up when they were typing something in? And you may or may not agree with what I came up with, but I said you're more than likely to screw up when you're putting in this field or when you're putting in this field. All right, because they're fields that they're not numeric fields. You could screw up on the zip code, I understand that. You could screw up on the state, I understand that. You could screw up on the department number, I understand that. But of the ones that are in here, those I thought are probably the 2 that you'd screw up the most often. I left the hyphen off of O'Fallon on one. On another one I spelled O'Fallon and I only put 1 L in there. All right, that kind of an idea. So what I decided to do, and I mentioned this to you yesterday, that if you know somebody's zip code, basically you can get their city and their state. So I created a new table that had the zip code in it, the city and the state. What that allowed me to do was to remove the city and the state from this table. I still need the zip code because remember, we talked about this when we did joins. I still want to be able to relate things. But now I can remove these 2 fields from my employees table. Then I looked at this and I said, well, why am I typing in the department name for every employee? Is that really necessary? And the answer is no. So I created another table that had these 2 fields in it, the department number and the department name. All right, then by doing that, I was able to remove this table from the departments, or from the employees table. So I could remove that field. So what I'm telling you is now, by creating 2 more tables, I'm able to remove these 3 fields from this table. Now, naturally, what a lot of people end up saying is, okay, I get that. I understand what you're saying. That said, why don't I just put them all in one table? Well, it's what I just mentioned to you. I don't want to have to type in Wentzville every time. I don't want to type in Missouri every time. Remember, it could be other states too. I don't want to type in information technology or web design or accounting or shipping or payroll every time. Now I don't have to. All right. So by doing that, what I did was I first said, okay, let's create this city-state zip table. And this is what I put in it. All right. I did add an ID field in here, and these don't have to be in any special order. Sometimes when people see stuff like this, they're like, they're not in alphabetic order. And you kind of go nuts. I don't know why. But as time goes on, what if I add another city? So what if I put these into alphabetic order? So I've got what? Lake St. Louis, then O'Fallon, then St. Peter's, then Wentzville. So I could put them in order like that. I could have done that. But then somebody comes in and let's say they want Troy in there. Well, technically, Troy would go between St. Peter and Wentzville. So already it would be out of order unless I kept changing that ID. I didn't want to. So I said the order doesn't matter. It's the content that matters. In much the same way, when we put in this information, what order was that in? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It really wasn't in any order. It was in the order in which you sit. That was the way, that's what I used. All right. So I created this city-state zip, and then I created this departments table. And I did, to me it didn't make sense to have another ID field in here, so I just used department. I could have called it department ID instead of department number. That would have been fine. And again, these are not in alphabetic order for the same reason I just mentioned. As time goes on, it's quite possible that I could come in here and add new departments. All right, and the chance of me being able to add new departments and keep this in alphabetic order are probably none. All right, so once I did that, once I created and added this city-state zip table, and I added this departments table, then I took our original 11-column table, and it's now an 8-column table. So it's cleaned up. Again, hopefully you're understanding why this was done. All right? And I've had this argument with people before. You should just put everything in one table. No, you shouldn't. All right? So that's what it changed to. All right. Then I came back in here and took all of these. As you can see, there are no spaces between them. All right? There are none. So I went back and I saved all of them, and I saved them all. And again, this is in the folder that you have. I saved them all as comma-separated variable files. Well, look what happened when I did. All right? I'm not sure why I've got double commas on the end. I did it several times, and I got goofy results with some of them. All right? So that was the comma-separated variable. And the first thing right here, those were our headings, and this was all of our data. All right? Then for the next one, for the departments, there were our headings. Oops. And here was our data. Then I got to the point where I had the, oops, I want to show you that, but not right now. The city-state zip, and that didn't put that there, but I got double or triple commas in other places, and I didn't know why. So what I have to do is go back and take a look at how to save a spreadsheet as a comma-separated variable file without screwing it up, because it's pretty obvious that's what I did. All right? So I went back in and I cleaned these up. Okay? So in other words, and you'd have to do this, but leaving this like it is. So leaving this like it is. This file, this citystatezip.csv, what I want to show you is this. Using this tool, all right? Select the file. And I'll go in there. It's going to be wrong right now, but I'll go back and fix it. So going in here into the CSV file and choosing citystatezip.csv. All right. It says what kind of file is it? It is a comma-separated variable file. The first row does have headers, and I want to call it citystatezip. So tell it to convert your file. This is such a nice tool because what it does is it writes the script for you. So you can plop that script right into PHPMyAdmin, okay? So the problem is, it did come through here, and this one actually, it worked. But the other ones, it put in extra fields, it put nulls on the end, it did a bunch of stuff it shouldn't have done, all right? So, I'm taking a short story and making it long, but the other stuff that's in there, and I save these all as .sql files. This, after I clean them up, this is what you have. So here's the employees table. I'm going to make it nice and small so you can see everything. All right? So this is what that tool did. It created an employees table. It gave me every field. All right? The only thing that's not in there right now, I guess two things. The first thing, that just so you know, this first thing right here, it does not, because it's not smart enough, that it could come in and say primary key ID unique SSN. So I'd have to manually add those. Does that make sense? Okay? Because it doesn't port those over. Then with the departments, same thing. I have to come back in here and add the primary key. All right? And then finally, for the city-state zip one, I guess I didn't open that one. There it is. It did the same thing. Now, that's a nice tool in that it does that. It's literally when you go and do something with a CSV file, you've got to do a little bit more work. So I want to go back quickly and look at that article with you. All right, step one, open your Excel spreadsheet. Find the worksheet you want to export. Step 2, save it as a comma-separated variable file. Step 3, bring up PHPMyAdmin. All right, step 4, talks a little bit more about PHPMyAdmin. Step 5, it says here, once you've accessed it, you need to create a new database. You know how to do that. We did it the other day, yesterday. All right, so you give that a name. Step 6, you need to create tables for your database. So you need to create the schema. You know how to do that because we created the schema yesterday before we entered the record information. If you create the schema, then you put in the primary key, the unique key, whether or not they allow nulls, etc. All that good stuff. All right. Step 7. Okay. It says you need to manually type in all that field information, which is what I just told you, and click Save. Step 8. Now you're ready to import your CSV files. You may or may not have noticed this, but there is a thing on here that says Import. All right? So if I click Import and I tell it, then what do I want to import? So for instance, if I said this city-state zip CSV file, and that's not the one I want, but if I did choose that one, then I have to say that it's comma separated, etc. Well, the problem is when I save my stuff as a CSV file, it didn't enclose my commas, my fields in double quotes, so that was wrong. It didn't escape columns with double quotes because that was wrong. It didn't terminate lines automatically. It terminated lines with commas, so I had to manually change all that stuff. If I didn't manually change it, it gave me an error as soon as I tried to do the conversion. When I manually changed that stuff, what it did was it did the conversion, but it said absolutely nothing. So they were still blank. So I couldn't get that to work. So I did follow all of the steps that were in here. They just didn't work. So what I'd like us to do right now is to do this. Okay, I'd like you to come in, and I don't care what editor you use, but it should be Notepad++ or it should be Notepad. But I'd like you to first open up the file that's called employees.sql. This one. We're going to see if we can get this to work. If it doesn't work, fine, it doesn't work. We're out 15 minutes or so. Has everybody been able to find this one? Okay. You see anything that looks kind of erroneous in here? Yeah, somehow I got a column 6, and I don't know how. I might have left the tab in there. I don't know. So first thing is remove this thing that says column 6. Highlight it, just like you see on the screen in gray, and remove it. Then get rid of all these nulls, not these two, but all of the nulls that are in here with a comma after them. So manually remove each one of those. Make sure there's only one comma, that you don't have comma, comma, or it's not going to work when we attempt to create this in just a minute. All right. These two nulls are because for Colin and for Evan, I said they didn't have middle initials. Okay. Now there's two more things that we want to do here. Hopefully everybody has done this. All right. I want you to go where it's got department number right there. I want you to go to the end of that line, right where the cursor's flashing right now. Mine it's number 9. Put a comma in there, hit enter, and type in primary key, then in parentheses ID, and a comma on the end, and type in unique. You have to spell it correctly. And put in SSN. All right. So when you're all done, it should look like this. So take a quick look at it, please, and make sure that it looks the way you think it should look, works the way you think it should work. All right. Make sure you have no double commas here where we remove that null. make sure you put a primary key. You can put that in backticks, this here, if you want to, but you don't have to. So we could have done this, and we could have done this. It's not mandatory you do that. It's only mandatory that you add those backticks if either I've got 2 words in there instead of 1. So if I'd have made zip code 2 words, then I would have needed the backticks. Or if I'm, like we saw yesterday, if I'm using a keyword in here. All right? So if I wanted to use DESC, then I'd have to do that. Okay, so we removed column 6 from here. We removed those nulls that went with column 6, and we added these things here. And make sure that your comma is right there. All right? After you've done that, save. I'm going to pause, and I'm going to let Jeremy take over right now. So we'll start this back up again then. And again, hopefully this one everybody has done now. All right. Then if you bring up the next one, that was the hard one. We bring up departments. Your department one should look like this. And all we have to put in for the department one, all we have to add is a comma here and say primary key department number. And again, if you want to, you can put it in the ticks. All right, that's it. The rest of this should be okay as it is. All right. So I'm going to save that. And then finally, I'm going to bring up the city-state zip one. Okay. And again, in a similar way, put a comma in here at the end of zip code and put in primary key, CSZID. All right, so add that. Okay, and make sure, as always, you put in that comma there. Okay, save. Now, what I'm showing you is maybe not the best way of doing it. It is, bless you, it is a way of doing it. Everybody hear that? So it is a way of doing it. All right? Now, I don't want to confuse you, but I want to tell you something. If I wanted to, you don't have to do this. Please listen, you don't have to do this. But if I wanted to, I could go back to my employees file. I'm going to copy all of it to the clipboard. All right? And I'm going to hit enter a couple times, and I'm going to paste it in. All right, so I'm pasting that whole thing in. Then I'm going to hit enter just a couple more times, so I've got some blank lines. Then I'm going to go over to my departments one. I'm going to highlight all that. And then I'm going to paste it in. So I've got that. Hit enter a couple more times. Then I'm going to go back to the city-state zip. Copy all of that. All right, and paste it in. So why am I wasting the time, or taking the time, that was the wrong file. Why am I taking the time to do that, to show you that, or whatever? The reason that I am is if I went back and put this in, and now I put in, as an example, drop database if exists. I'm going to call this Acme 2 because none of us should have anything called Acme 2. All right? And then I'm going to say create database Acme 2 and then use Acme 2. All right? Now, with all this stuff that's in here, I'm not going to do this. This is a script. So if I save this as an example and I save it here as all.sql as an example, all right? Now, if I want to, I should be able to highlight all of this. And then if I wanted to, I could take that file, right mouse click, and paste it in here. Boom, it would create everything for me. Does that make sense? All right. Now, there could be errors in here. I'd have to check. But let's see, do I have an I'm going to check and see if I have an Acme 2. So I don't know if I do or not. I do. All right, so I don't want that Acme 2 in here anymore. I was having problems today removing things, but I'm going to try to see if in fact, I don't have an Acme 3. So I'll make mine Acme 3 instead of Acme 2. So I'll make that Acme 3 here, here, and here. All right. Now, I'm going to copy it, Control A, Control C. I'm going to come in here, right mouse click, and put it in. Now I start to look and see if I have any errors in here. Guess what? As far as I can tell, there ain't any. All right, so I'm going to show databases. There's Acme 3. I'm going to use Acme 3. I can show my tables. There's city, state, zip, departments, and employees. If I describe city, state, zip, there it is. Got my primary key because I put it in. If I select star from city, state, zip, there's my stuff. All right. And I can, again, describe departments. There it is. I can select star from departments. There it is. I can now describe employees. There it is. And I can select star from employees. And there they are. Now, I don't know if you agree or not, but most of the time I spent doing this was demonstrating to you how to do something. The actual act of doing it, so to speak, didn't take very long. So if somebody who knew what they were doing a lot better than me created the comma-separated variable files for you in the first place, and you ran them against this tool, you could basically set up a database fairly quickly. All right? Now, just so you know, so why did I do this? Why did I combine all of this together? I could have run these separately. I could have run I probably would have done the employees one first, then whichever one I did second, the departments and the city, it wouldn't matter. But I put them all together so I could run them all at one time. Does that make sense? All right. The other thing that I can do now, just so you see this, and if you wanted to do what I just did, fine. And if you didn't, also fine. All right. I'm going to come back and what I'm going to do, just to show you this, is I'm going to come back in here now into PHPMyAdmin, and I'm going to create a new database. I'm getting way too many Acmes, but I'm going to create Acme 4. ACME 4, because I don't have an Acme 4. Click Create, boom, there it is. It's right there. Okay? Would you agree there's nothing in there? In fact, the system is telling me to put something in there. Now, if I want to, I can go back and I can find my departments.sql, the employees first.sql, copy it all to the clipboard, then go back into here again and click the SQL tab and paste it in. Tell it to go, and boom. Now that table's created, and all the records have been put in there. Okay? I can click the SQL tab again. I can come back, and now I can move over to departments, copy all of that, paste that in, tell it to go. Now that one's in there. Finally go back and one more time, go back into here, find my city, state, zip, copy that to the clipboard, come back in here one last time, go to SQL, click go. Now I've got my whole database built. I'll take your question in a second. With what we've done, does that make sense? So now I can come in with any of these tables, city, state, zip. I can look at the structure. Boom, it's all been set. Okay? Now, if for some reason, when I did this, let's say I had you do it and I didn't have you add that primary key. Everybody with me? So let's say for this one, when we did this file, right here, I didn't have you add this. So that wasn't in there. Then you could have come back in here and you could have clicked on here and then just click the primary key, or come over here, and told it to edit, okay? Do a change or something, and then come in here and add the primary key there. See what I'm saying? There's a bunch of different ways that you can do this. The reason that I'm telling you this is what I plan on doing, because I'm sorry, screw these CSV files. I don't like them. But when you're working on your worksheet, I'm going to give you something similar to what I just showed you. I don't want you to waste your time keying in all this record information. All right? I may have you create the schemas, but the records, I'm going to have you copy it in. If you want to key it in, you can do that. To me, that's a waste of time. All right, Colin, you had a question?
Does the import thing do the same thing as your copy and pasting?
What the import is supposed to do is it would take the CSV file directly and bring it in. The advantage of using the CSV file, all right, is what you do first is you go into PHPMyAdmin, you create the database, you create the table schema. It's just the data that you bring in. All right, so there's no create. You have to go into PHPMyAdmin when you're working with the import. You already have to have the table. But what import does is it allows you to bring in, all right, to bring in the data. All right. Now there's a lot more you can do with that, just so you know, other than what I just told you. All right. And let's say I want to go the other way. So let's say that I want to take this particular thing in here that's got this. Notice there's also an export. So it says, well, what do you want to do? All right. And I can export it out into a CSV file, for example. So I can go both directions. So I can either import something in or I can export something out. Now, to me, right now with where you are in your database careers, let's assume that Brady gets a job and he's an SQL programmer. He can have somebody in 10 minutes show him a hell of a lot more about comma-separated variable files than I'll ever know. So that's not what's important. What's important to me is that you have these tables set up and that you're able to use them. Does all that make sense? All right, let's take a break and we'll come back at 9:15.